Asato ma sadgamaya tamaso ma jyotirgamaya mrityurmamritam gamaya. From the unreal, lead us to the real. From darkness, lead us unto light. From death, lead us to immortality. Om, peace, peace, peace. The householder, disciples of Sri Ramakrishna. We begin this series with Gopaler Ma, Gopala's mother. And since this life was so profound, we'd like to take it in its details. It's subtitled The Astounding Gopal's Mother. Well, that was my first reaction when I first read about this great spiritual personality. Astounding. And I titled it accordingly. Astounding, yes. These were great spiritual personalities hidden away from the eyes of ordinary people, devotees. Sri Ramakrishna is so huge in our mental horizon, and along with that, Holy Mother and Vivekananda and all the monastic disciples, that we tend to sideline some of these great personalities. So in starting these series of classes on starting with the women devotees, disciples of Sri Ramakrishna, we'd like to take their lives one by one and how they could solve their problems, spiritual as well as other worldly problems, could give us insight into our own problems and solutions. Gopala's mother, or Gopal's mother, it's like, we worship the infant Jesus. So Krishna is also worshipped as an infant Krishna and is called Gopala. That being said, Sri Ramakrishna had given Gopal's mother a very high place. In his estimation, she was really great. And he is delighted in having the skeptical Swami Vivekananda. When he used to come, he was a roaring fire and skeptical and bashing all superstitions and all these kind of rituals. And he used to pit Gopal's mother along with Swami Vivekananda. And this old lady, she used to tell Swami Vivekananda weepingly, "My child, you see, I experienced this and I see this. I don't know. I'm a poor woman. I'm ignorant. But can you tell me whether these are real or these are just my imagination?" And Swami Vivekananda used to weep. "Mother, they are all real and they're real." That was also preparing the future ground for Swami Vivekananda. So we have Gopala's mother, her beautiful life, which we, of course, we will go through in 3 or 4 sections. There was a time in the ancient days, the very ancient days, the Vedic days, when spiritual practices were of a different type, and they needed a different type of body to endure those spiritual disciplines. As the Vedic age tapered down into the Puranic age, the age of the Puranas and the devotional scriptures, a different type of spiritual practices were needed. And this is a time when you see a huge, you can say, wave of women sages who had taken up spiritual practices through the path of devotion. And it was very easy for women to attain God through this path of devotion. And it was also recommended. This continued for centuries and centuries. And as this movement grew, it's not only women, but all types of spiritual aspirants could access those great Vedic truths now. We won't go into the history, but we'll go into how Gopala's mother, only through intense devotion and focus, could attain the very highest goal enumerated in the scriptures. Sister Nivedita, she was the Irish disciple of Swami Vivekananda. And he, in order to inculcate certain spiritual values in her, had sent her to Gopala's mother to meet her. And later on, during Gopala's mother's last days, Nivedita was present, fanning her for days on end, till she gave up her body. So Nivedita speaks about the first time she meets this Gopala's mother. Now Gopala is the baby Krishna, because in India we have the proper nouns also, Gopala. Her child was the infant Krishna, that's it. And that's why she was called Gopala's mother. Nivedita writes, how beautiful was the Ganges as the little boat crept on, and how beautiful seemed the long flight of steps rising out of the water and leading up through its lofty bathing ghat past the terraced lawn to the cloister-like veranda on the right, where in a little room lived Gopala's ma, and told her beads for many a year. Her own little room was absolutely without comforts. Her bed was of stone, and a floor of stone, and the piece of matting she offered her guests to sit on was also very bare. It had to be taken down from a shelf and unrolled. The handful of parched rice and sugar candy that formed her only store were all that she could give in hospitality, were taken from an earthen pot that hung from a roof by a few cords. But the place was spotlessly clean, washed constantly by Ganges water of her own sturdy carrying. And in a niche near her hand lay an old copy of the Ramayana, and a great horn spectacles, and a little white bag containing her beads. On those beads, Gopal Ma had become a saint. Hour after hour, day after day, for how many years had she sat day and night absorbed in them? This is a picture of Gopal's Ma. Sometimes people ask whether there is a God who exists or no. The highest value that you give in your life becomes a kind of a God. It might be name, it might be fame, it might be money, it might be anything. That becomes a God, that drives you. For Gopala's mother, it was that reality that drove her. Can you imagine a woman living all alone? Of course, there was another companion who could sustain such a spiritual attitude and spiritual practices for years, decades. So that is what drove her. Gopal's mother, her name was Aghormani Devi. Devi is a goddess, and it also is used after the names of all women. The name of a woman and Devi is all. So in India, if you start a talk without addressing all women as Devi, you had it. So nobody is going to listen to you. Aghormani. Now money is a jewel. Aghora is a name of Shiva. So she was a jewel, and Aghora means, Ghora is the terrific, the non-terrific. Shiva is the sublime, the compassionate one. He's called Aghora, one aspect of Shiva. She was the gem of that sublimity and that beauty and the spirituality. That was her name. She was born in 1882 in a Brahmin family, just north of Calcutta, in a place called Kamarati. The place still exists. You can go there. It's an amazing place. Even today, you'll see your hair standing on end. Following the customs of those times, in those days, she was married. Actually, it's not marriage, it's betrothal at the age of 9. And that was the first and the last time she ever saw her husband. When she was 14, her husband died. Real marriage was consummated later on when the girl attained puberty, etc. So at 14, she was now technically a widow. And to make matters worse, in those days, even today to a certain extent, widows did not remarry, number one. When Swamiji was asked in America, why don't they remarry? Well, see, we are a very monastic race. She had a chance. Well, now she's lost it. Okay, now what do? Live as a nun, and that was that. So you've got to live as a nun. It is one, if you look at from one side, it is a disaster. But from the other side, it opens an unlimited opportunity to pursue your spiritual goals. You've got to bathe 3 times or 2 times a day, sleep on bare floor, eat once a day, wear white clothes, shave your head, and you have to be extremely austere. That was a life of a widow. They were condemned. Some people say they're condemned. But you will say she was condemned. into a spiritual life. People, they talk about disparagingly about these Brahmanical, you can say, culture. Yeah, to a certain extent, they have some validity, but it's extremely difficult to live that kind of intense life. They lived an intense life of poverty, of chastity, of spirituality. Many people can't sustain those values even for a day or 2 days maybe. She was at a young age only initiated by the family gurus. In every family we had gurus. Some gurus used to be a family gurus of a few other families of the neighborhood. So she was initiated into a mantra of Gopala. That started it all. Now we have, since she had, you can say, she was young and her brother was a priest. And so he performed worship in a house which had a small temple and which later this Gopal's Ma came to live. And it was by the grace of providence that there was another woman who was also seeking a companion and who was also living more like a nun, and was delighted when the priest, Gopal's mother, spoke about his sister, and she agreed to let Gopal's mother come and stay there. And this was the beginning of their lifelong friendship. She had no money. Whatever she had inherited and from her husband's family, and she sold off some jewelry, she had invested that money, and she used to live on 2 or 3 rupees per month. That was the bare necessities. Now, before we can go to the other part of her life, let me bring in her first vision, which is kind of bringing into context her life. She says she used to wake up very early in the morning. One spring in 1885, it was around 3 a.m., Gopal's mother started to practice her japa as usual. After finishing her japa, she began to practice pranayama, and I was about to offer the results of her spiritual practices to the Lord, when she noticed Sri Ramakrishna sitting by her left, and she was wondering, how did he come here at this time of the day and from such a distance? She describes it in her own words. I looked at Sri Ramakrishna in amazement and thought, how did he come here? Meanwhile, Sri Ramakrishna kept on smiling sweetly. As I took courage and tried to grasp his left hand, Sri Ramakrishna's form disappeared, and in its place appeared the real Gopala, a big child 10 months old. This was the infant Krishna. His beauty and looks beggar description. He crawled towards me and, raising one hand, said, "Mother, give me butter." And that's a very famous, you can say, statue which is used today also, like with one hand raised, he's crawling, and give me butter. This overwhelming experience bewildered me. I cried out so loudly that if there were men around, they would have assembled there. With tearful eyes, I said, "My son, I am poor a helpless widow. What shall I feed you? Where shall I get butter and cream, my child? But Gopala did not listen to me. Give me something to eat, he kept on saying. What could I do? Sobbing, I got up and brought some dry coconut balls from the hanging basket. Placing them in his hand, I said, Gopala, my darling, I offer you this wretched thing, but don't give me such a poor thing in return. I could no longer perform japa at all that day. Gopala sat on my lap, snatched away my rosary, jumped on my shoulders, and moved around the room. At daybreak, I rushed to Dakshineshwar like a crazy woman. Gopala also accompanied me, resting his head on my shoulder. I distinctly saw Gopala's two tiny rosy feet hanging over my bosom. This is a vision of God, a tangible vision. People say, can you see God? Yeah, this is what it is. Not only see God, God appears and to the devotee and has a little fun. Actually plays in a very tangible form. It is called the Bhava Darshana, to see it with spiritual eyes. Sri Ramakrishna says, you cannot see God with these eyes. Well, there are some people who have with these, but you can see God through those spiritual eyes. Even in the Bhagavad Gita, Sri Krishna tells Arjuna, you can see my form with these eyes. Divyam dadami te chakshu. I'll give you this divine sight. Now see all my forms. So this divine eyes or spiritual eyes, or you call it the third eye, is developed through spiritual practices. Your body, your subtle body within undergoes a complete change. It becomes so pure. It becomes translucent. In that spiritual body, you can see God. People want to say, can you see God? Convert your body into a spiritual body, your subtle body, and you can see God. You can see Him tangibly and play with Him. So this was the vision of Gopala's mother. And what did she do to get this? She says, Gopal's mother rose at 2 a.m., washed her face and hands, and then started her japa, which continued till 8 a.m. Next, she cleaned the Radha Krishna temple. There was a temple, a Radha and Krishna temple, washed the worship vessels, picked flowers, and made garlands and sandal paste. She was neat, clean, and meticulous. She would bathe twice a day, mornings in the Ganges and evenings in the pond. After bathing in the Ganges, she meditated for some time under a bilva tree in the temple garden. Then she collected dry leaves for a cooking fire. She usually cooked rice, lentils, bitter squash, and potatoes. A food offering to baby Gopala was worth seeing. She would place a wooden seat on the floor for Gopala and offer cooked food on a banana leaf plate set before him. Then she would partake of the prasad, rest for a while, and again keep on doing japa till Vespers. And again after Vespers, she ate a very simple, light meal consisting of a few offered coconut balls, grated coconut mixed with molasses and formed into a ball. That was her dinner. A little milk. and she continued her japa till midnight. With rare exceptions, she followed this routine daily for over 30 years, from 1852 to 1883. This was it. When we read about these things, kind of it gives one such great inspiration and great strength also. Because there are times when your spiritual practices are tepid. Sometimes we are so distracted. When we read the lives of these great spiritual personalities, it gives us inspiration, fortitude, courage. Because to perform spiritual practices, one needs to have this courage. Because one faces one's own inner self. So this is her routine for every day. For years and years and years she practiced this. So she drew on her capital very rarely. Her friend, she was actually a landlady, and she helped her at times to take care of some of the experiences. Spiritual life is not kind of a mere show. The more secret it is, the more powerful it is. The more you display your spirituality or your spiritual practices, the weaker it becomes. So that's why, pray in silence. Even Christ says, close your door and pray to your God who can hear you in silence. And don't be like those hypocrites who stand out there in the temple and pray. In the Bible, he was teaching us how to pray. That's the real essence of spiritual practices. So this was her life, a life that she was thrown into, a hard life. But the material discomforts and the poverty could not kind of bring her mind down. Generally, some need or some want or some deficiency will make us worried. She wasn't. We are more worried of if I get a little cold, I take 2, you can say, tablets to keep me all right. These people, whether it's cold or hot, in sickness and disease, in pain and pleasure, day and night, they have just one goal and they don't bother about any other thing. This is that, you can say, nishta, the steadfastness that comes when you start practicing. The very first vision of Gopala was when she had cooked prasad and there was a strong breeze blowing, and she used to place a banana leaf as a plate, and she would place the food on it and then take that and offer it to her chosen deity, Gopala. And the breeze kept on blowing that banana leaf plate. And suddenly, she was harassed with that. Suddenly a young boy comes in, holds the banana leaf plate down and says, "Mother, now you place the prasad here on this." Okay. And she does that. And after she does that, the boy vanishes. And suddenly, where did this boy? Who was that boy? And it dawned on her, this was her chosen ideal that had appeared to her as a little boy. As a little boy, of course, she used to worship him as a little boy and helped her. And that sparked her intense yearning to see him again it says that there was a kind of a spiritual madness that came over her. And she's like, man, Gopala, Gopala, where are you? Where are you? She became mad with that first vision. After that first vision, she was pining. And then, as we have read, then that's what happened. When the real thing came in, when Gopala came and stayed. Can you imagine God's form sitting down on your lap, pulling at your rosary, sitting down on your shoulders? Kind of mind blowing. We have all sorts of conceptions of God. This is another conception of God. When you approach God as a mother approaches a child, it's called a Vatsalya bhav. In the devotional scriptures, they ask you to have a definite attitude towards God, either as a friend, as God as a master and you're a servant, as a beloved, as a child, and as one who has a calm, quiet attitude. It's called Shanta, Dasya, Vatsalya, Sakya, and Madhura. And God as a lover, that's the highest. In this age, Sri Ramakrishna recommended this, that you think of yourself as a child of God. And of course, the child of God also, there's a role reversal also. God can be thought of as a child, and you as a parent taking care. In this, what happens? All the glory and the majesty and the power and everything that is associated with God, the unknowingness and the distance, everything is just wiped out. You approach God as a mother, and God now needs to be taken care of. That's a great, you can say, attitude. Yeah, God, oh, He is helpless. What will you do without me? And we have seen it in the lives of all the parents of avatars, where they knew who the child was. That was an avatar. God descended. But yet their parental feelings of love sometimes overrode their, you can say, knowledge of that this is an incarnation of God. That the child has to be taken care of, he has to be fed, he doesn't go running around hungry, and he has to be bathed, and this and that. This is one of the hallmarks of the highest form of spirituality, when God is looked upon as needing help. And you were the one who are going to help. This has been not only authenticated in Gopala's mother's life, but hundreds of other women, you can say saints. They look upon God as their child, and they want to take care of him. So this was Gopal's mother. Okay. So she had her room, which Nivedita describes. A further description is, she lived in a very tiny room, which is of course still there, and 3 windows faced the river Ganges. From inside the room, there were large earthen pots containing rice, lentils, spices, and other supplies that she purchased in quantities to last for 6 months. Fresh vegetables were brought once a week at a local market. She kept her few articles of clothing in a tin trunk, and her cooking pots and pans were neatly stacked in one corner. Both her inner life and her outer life were well organized. The scriptures always say that the means used by saints becomes also a form of spiritual practices for future aspirants. What they did and what they used to realize God also becomes an authentic path to be emulated, to be followed by other spiritual aspirants. So this was, she hardly slept. She went to sleep at 12 when she woke up at 2. And in the afternoon after her lunch, she had a little rest. That was all. How can the body last? People say you cannot sit for too long, you will get cramps and you will get clots and you will get this. What? These bodies transcended the ordinary idea of a body. Spiritual practices transform your bodies, no doubt about it. They completely. You don't have a normal, soft, delicate body. This body has been made for and by spiritual practices. She could sit on for hours and hours on her small yoga mat, as they say, and take her beads and count and count and count and count and count, hours and hours on end. This was her life in that small, tiny room. Amazing. And she had no other cares, no other worries. So this was Gopala's mother. This is the opening salvo, of course. We are going to see how later on, how she gets her visions intense, more and more intense. Sri Ramakrishna was very careful about what food was offered to him, by whom. Food which had some motive was never taken by him. You give it unselfishly, okay, with love, that's okay. Sri Ramakrishna himself says, there are some people who give food here, offer food here, with a string of desires. And that's what they do when they go to a holy man. That's the best way to eliminate your karma, you see. So he used to warn his other disciples not to touch those particular food which he had earmarked as harmful for spiritual growth. But he could offer it only to 2 people. Not even Raja Maharaj could touch it. And we know Swami Brahmananda was such a great spiritual personality. Even he was barred from touching that food. The only 2 people whom Sri Ramakrishna gave that food to. One was Gopala's mother, another was Swami Vivekananda. Saying in them the fire of spirituality is blazing. The food they eat will not harm them in any way, but it will harm the others. So this was the, you can say, stature that Sri Ramakrishna had given to Gopala Irma. Amazing. We've been hearing about only Vivekananda all through and what he was. Can you see, compare him to Gopala's mother? And he used to send all his disciples to meet her, go and see her. This is what he's saying. In one place he tells Nivedita, this is old India of tears and prayers and fasts and vigils and spiritual practices. This was India. She represented the entire, you can say, the spiritual culture of India. This was her life. Crying and weeping for whom? For God. Doing everything for whom? For God. So she really embodies womanhood, a spiritual woman. And people reading about her, I'm sure they will say, what kind of life was this? A modern woman would say, what kind of life was this? There's no fun. You don't know when you start doing japa, you practice spiritual disciplines, you get tremendous joy. The joy is more internal. The more internal one's joy is, the more permanent it is. The more external your sources of joy are, the more transient they are. It will leave you dry. So Gopala's mother, Agormani Devi, she had her joy within in her spiritual practices. We stop here for now to take up some questions. We will take the second part of this great life next Friday, same time, 7 p.m. Tomorrow, we have at the Arlington Retreat, Tapovan, from 1 to 5, a retreat on yoga and meditation. All are welcome, those who are around. On Sunday, as I said, we're going to speak about the avatar's divine mission and how an avatar impacts the world of spirituality. That will be Sunday at 10 a.m. Okay, there's a pranams and pranams. Okay, thanks. You have any questions? If we don't have questions, we can go through some of the things. There's still no questions. Okay, okay. Thank you. Excellent choice to have series of the household of disciples. So this was Gopal's mother's, you can say, life. And they had heard about Sri Ramakrishna. Obviously, what happens is they never lived too far away from where Sri Ramakrishna lived, on the same bank of the river, about 2 miles downstream. So one day, both of them, Agormani Devi and her companion, the landlady, who was also brilliantly advanced in spiritual life. So they go and see Sri Ramakrishna, because that's the idea. To develop spirituality, you go and visit a spiritual person, so you can imbibe certain things, and then slowly you can grow. So this has been the tradition in India for a long time, even here, not only this, also here. So she had gone to Sri Ramakrishna, and that was the beginning of that lifelong association. We'll see later how amazingly Sri Ramakrishna says, you have attained everything. Can you believe it? Are you sure? Saying, yes, you have attained everything. Anyway, you got to repeat it. Have I attained everything? Yes, you have attained. Sri Ramakrishna is saying you have attained everything. I mean, spiritual life has got layers and layers. I mean, huge layers. The spectrum is unbelievable. To even attain a small bandwidth of spirituality is considered great. Yes. And to attain the entire bandwidth of spirituality, spectrum, oh my God. Astounding. That's why I said astounding. I remember when I had read about her, my God, I'm stealing myself. I burst into tears. Amazing how these people have been here and living their life quietly. So this is something we would like to present to you all devotees. They're extremely important. That people think that only spirituality is limited to monasticism, the special spirituality. The rest are just, they take a little tidbits here and there. No. And Sri Ramakrishna had come for both, especially for the householders. And he was very compassionate towards them. The monastics, of course, they were a different class. We'll speak about that later. Yes, who can inspire us more than God? Yes, sure. Who can inspire us more? Yeah, she will be a great inspiration for, let me tell you, for thousands of years. As long as Sri Ramakrishna's name will be there, Holy Mother's name, her name too will be associated with for thousands of years. Because this is not just a kind of flash in the pan and it goes away. Her life will inspire many people. Okay, that's all. Mainly it's all. Okay, what happened to her when she went to Sri Ramakrishna? We will see something funny happened, don't worry. We'll come to that in the next class. Okay. So, those who are interested, I'm using the book They Live with God by Swami Satyamayananda. We have her kind of life written elaborately in other places. I thought this could be a good starting point. So we can. So it's funny. And then she, when she went to Sri Ramakrishna, and then second time and third time, she said, "No, I'm not going to go to him. I'm not." The only thing he asked is, "What have you brought for me? What have you brought for me? What have you brought for me?" And she said, "What kind of holy man is this? Only thinking of eating, eating, eating. I'm not going to go to him." And the moment she left his presence and leaving, she felt drawn back. And that was what that was a kind of a divine attraction pulling. Every time she said, he is only thinking of eating and eating and eating, and what kind of holy man? And here it was. Can't leave his thoughts, that attraction was there. But if you noticed, when during that first intense vision of hers, Sri Ramakrishna appeared to her, sitting on her left, and she was wondering, how did he appear here at this time of the morning? It was because she used to finish her meditation by 8 o'clock, from 2 o'clock in the morning till 8 o'clock, 6 hours straight. People sit around for 5 minutes and they'll get their back hurting and their legs, knees are hurting. And she was smiling, and she went to hold his hand, and that Ramakrishna form converted into the form of Gopala. Yes, it's wonderful. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's kind of this little message there, right? Vivekananda comes, but then he leaves, and Krishna's there, but it's not. No one left.
Yeah, no one left. No one left. God.
It's so subtle.
Yeah, it's
well,
just.
Now comes my other form. He just says, "What?"
It's true. A friend here says that God does not actually leave. God is there, always present with you. Yes.
Especially was drawn to.
Yes.
The baby Krishna.
And God is always there. In fact, He is the greater reality there. It's only thing we have not been able to intuit to to see Him. And that we will learn from these great lives, how they converted their subtle bodies into spiritual bodies, and they could see God directly. Vedanta says to see God like the fruit in the palm of one hand, directly. Here it's demonstrably true. Here it is. Similarly, seeing God can be seen like this, straight here. So thank you very much for joining us in. Oh yeah, I don't know. It might go for a year or two. I don't know, but we will continue. These are great lives, and they need to be, I can say, revealed to all of us, because times are getting tougher, and as times get tougher, you need to have even a stronger spiritual message to counter those for the tough times. See, when you're going on to climb a mountain, you don't go like you're going to walk on the beach. You got to prepare yourself. So tough times are there, and you got to prepare yourself for those tough times. No life is easy. It's over. That old conception, every life is hard. And if you can face it with that spiritual strength, that will be the greatest, you can say, recompense and the gift and the fruit of living this life. Yes, what's the use of life? This is what makes life meaningful. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.